Hello, and welcome to this edition of BNEWS In Depth. I'm your host, Rich Hosford. Creating and writing Burlington's master plan has been a 3-year process that has required a lot of work by a lot of dedicated people. The plan, now in draft form, is meant to pull together a wide range of elements to help set the path for the town's development in the years and decades ahead. As the plan heads into the next phase, we wanted to take a wide-ranging look at it. To do so, we invited 3 guests, Planning Director Kristin Kassner and Planning Board and Master Plan Steering Committee members Jack Kelly and Ernie Covino, to come in and talk about the work that has gone into the master plan, what has been learned, and what the next steps in the process may be. Please stay and join us for this interesting look at the plan that will, in many ways, shape the future of Burlington in this month's BNEWS In Depth. Hello and welcome. I'm here now joined by my guests, Ernie Covino, Kristin Kassner, and Jack Kelly. Thank you guys for coming on the show.
Thanks for inviting us.
So we just wanted to talk, we'll start at the beginning. What was what got this sort of master plan process started in the first place? And I can throw that question out to anybody.
You let the expert start.
Well, thank you. So the last master plan was done between the years of 1993 and 1997. It was done in elements over those years. We are definitely overdue for a master plan overhaul. These years we started getting asking for funding in 2014, 2015 to begin the process. So I don't know if Ernie, you might want to talk about the last round and jumping from there to where we are here today.
Sure. Well, the last round was done a little bit differently because there was no real social media then. At least not a lot of people were using it. So we had individual meetings at each of the grammar schools, and we had quite a good turnout. But we did it a little bit differently. We concentrated on just one element of the master plan and completed that, and then went on to the next one. The only problem, if I could put it that way, is that we never really got to what they call the implementation phase, planning and implementation phase. So although the master plan was there and it's on paper, it's very, very large and sometimes not really referred to the way we hope this master plan will be.
So this one you want to be more of have an impact or an influence going forward into the future.
Sure, and have it more accessible too.
And not to say that the 1990s master plan didn't have huge influences on decision making. It definitely did. I mean, I think you see a lot of the actions around housing in particular that happened because of the master plan, housing for seniors, affordable housing, and some other aspects, trying to get under the 40B 10%. So there were definitely goals that were achieved from the 1990s master plan, but this plan, we really wanted to make sure there was a few things. One, we would do them together so we could ensure kind of vertical and horizontal consistency and balance among all the elements, as well as making sure we have a robust implementation plan that really brings this off paper into an action plan that we can quickly begin to, really realize the goals of the plan.
Going back to your original question, why? Technically, there's a state mandate that we do a master plan. The mandate has no teeth if you don't do it, and some communities don't, but the state likes communities to do it, and we like to work with the state because we sometimes ask for grant money, and if you have done a master plan, you get up on the front of the line when you're requesting grant monies for different projects, so we like money.
Well, money is always good.
Yes.
I imagine that, we have so many different organizations and factors. You've got, different town departments, but you also have different businesses all, making things happen. It must be helpful to sort of have an overarching kind of master plan, I guess would be the best term for it. So this has been 3 years in the making, right? To get to the point we're at now, correct? Just sort of talk about some of the work that has gone into getting to where we are now.
Well, first, I think it's important to outline how we began. That we began the process with an intentional plan to be more inclusive than just the planning board. And that's why we set up the steering committee with many different groups: Recreation, Board of Health, Board of Appeals, residents, town meeting members, Board of Selectmen. Conservation played a huge role. School committee and other groups, so we'd have a broad range of different groups represented. So we could first, that could help us first get really the different aspects of needs from either those committees or departments, as well as just different viewpoints from different residents. And that was set up, the format of the committee was set up through the planning board, but the appointments were made through the individual bodies, and then there were some resident and town meeting members that were selected by the moderator and residents from the selectmen and the planning board. So it was intentionally made so we'd have a wide perspective when we began, as well as began with a lot of workshops. We had a robust social media. We have over 400 followers on Facebook, the Facebook Master Plan page. We have over 150 people that are on an email list when we have events. Actually, we have more than that. We probably have 250. And so there was very much a community dialogue that we wanted to achieve. So we've had over 100 meetings from the beginning. That included, I think, 8 workshops, 6 neighborhood walks, 50 plus steering committee meetings, as well as other events such as events on the Commons at Pride Day or Celebrate Burlington, I think is what we call it now. Celebrate Burlington and Truck Day and other events, as well as the farmers market. We just really wanted to get out and see people that we didn't normally interact with. So it is terrific. We sent a survey out to get the high school involved. We're working now with the high school to try to get some artwork for our cover and some of the element covers, which is exciting to integrate some of the terrific talent that Burlington High School has. And so where we are now, it's been a long road. We've had thousands of people involved. It's been terrific. It's one of the best committees I've ever worked with, just for diversity, and it's just been such a good conversation. And it's been healthy debate, and that's what we should be having. We should be debating topics. And at the end of the day, as I mentioned at town meeting, it's amazing how much consensus we actually do have within the plan. I mean, there's a few prickly topics, but there's not really a battle that's going on with these topics, and I think we're finding quite a bit of common ground for the goals moving forward. So at the point we are right now, we are at the draft stage. It's all on our website. We're out for comment. We're open hearing with the planning board, getting comment through that process, and we hope to wrap the plan portion up sometime in March or April. The implementation committee is the next step to really take that plan, get the implementation committee started and really take that plan and start seeing some action among town departments, committees, and town meeting and the planning board.
To make a point of how good it is to have long-term planning and to look ahead, if you go back to, I think it was the 1950s, a gentleman by the name of Jack Gould who sort of led the charge to say, okay, let's put our industry down by 128 and Middlesex Turnpike and develop that and keep our residential and other areas. That's been the basis of the plan for a long time. That's worked well for us. We've got a thriving commercial base which pays close to 60% of our real estate taxes. And we have, to a certain degree, outgrown that, but we're looking to where we are and where we want to go, just as Jack Gould did back in the 50s. We're doing that again now to make sure that 20 years from now, our children and grandchildren are well positioned to live in a good town.
Yeah, so one of the things that I think was brought up during your town meeting presentation was one of the big feedbacks you had from residents was wanting to keep those single-family home residential neighborhoods intact. So to talk about how this helps address that concern or do that.
Well, that's one of the master plan steering committee was a 20-person committee, and I think that one of the consensuses that came out of that committee was definitely that was one of the prime things to keep the single-family residential neighborhoods as single-family residential neighborhoods. There was much talk about how we handle our aging population, who may not be able to stay in their homes but want to stay in Burlington, and that's actually still, I would say, in flux. Exactly how we do that, whether we do with what they call accessory apartments, in-law apartments, or somehow or another subsidize our senior citizens when they move into a condominium or apartment. As a matter of fact, that's one of the things that we're going to be discussing tomorrow night, weather permitting. We have set up a bunch of planning board meetings, since the planning board eventually has to vote on this master plan, approve it according to the state laws. I believe, is that correct? Okay. So our agendas are usually so full that by the time we get to our normal agendas, by the time we get to discussing the master plan, it's 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and everybody just would rather go home. So we've set up a series
can
of...
go on.
Yeah, well, we've set up a series of planning board meetings exclusively to talk about the master plan, and coincidentally, the one that's coming up tomorrow night, if it doesn't snow too hard, is about the housing element, which I think is going to last for at least a couple of meetings.
It won't be
Jack?
the
Yep.
only meeting on housing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to add to your point about protecting the single-family neighborhood, so the discussion really focused around protecting the character of single-family neighborhoods. There was also a lot of discussion about improving streetscape in single-family
Right.
neighborhoods and access to mobility and just sidewalks and safe areas to walk, especially in areas, the town center, around schools. Things like that. So while there was quite a bit of consensus around keeping the single-family character of the neighborhood, it was also consensus of, we would really love improved streetscape to slow traffic and to provide for sidewalks and bike areas. But to say that, it wasn't necessarily, we want to keep the single-family neighborhoods, and primarily want to keep them single-family neighborhoods. But there was some discussion of, as Ernie's mentioning, is there a way to provide for options for seniors, for young families, such as accessory apartments, or are there two-family houses that look like a single-family house? So there, and as I mentioned, some topics are prickly. Housing is probably the prickliest topic, because there's a lot of discussion about the need for affordability in Burlington, especially as housing prices are going up. But on the other side of that, there's still people want to have value in their homes, and their homes are very much part of their portfolio for retirement, that they don't, if it's affordability versus value, and how do we balance those interests? And that's a challenge that we'll be continuing to deal with as we move forward. But I think, Burlington, as Jack, you mentioned, Burlington, the forefathers of Burlington did a great job when the highways were built and gave us the commercial areas that we have now. And things were built then, and they were rebuilt, and they're going to be rebuilt again. And it's really what's the recipe for the next phase? We've seen a ton of redevelopment over the last 10 or 15 years with Northwest Park and Oracle building out. In the district, and that chapter is kind of coming to a close. So it's what's the next chapter, and what is it going to look like? What's the next Burlington Mall? What's Mall Road going to look like? And this plan really gets at kind of giving guidance as to what direction we should go in.
Yeah. Housing is, multiple family housing has always been an issue. When I moved here in '69, there weren't any apartment buildings, and when they came in, it was very controversial. Yet some of them came in, and then 40B came along, and we ended up with some of those, and Ernie knows that. He was on the Board of Appeals at the time, and how controversial that was.
I think maybe we should just explain to people who might not know the 40B.
40B is a state
or
law.
affordable housing
Yeah,
law.
it's a state law that says if your community does not have 10% of its housing stock categorized as affordable, then 40B allows a developer to come in and ignore your local zoning bylaws and just build to the state code. So you build something, an apartment building much bigger than the local zoning allowed. It was designed to prevent the NIMBY, not in my backyard attitude. And back then, most of your, quote, housing projects were in the cities. In the intent, whether they fully achieved it or not, I'll disagree. But the intent was to distribute the affordable housing all around the state. Certain communities got attacked more than others, ours being one of them, because we were a desirable location to do that, and people wanted to build here because we were close to a lot of services. But we're now close to 30% of our housing units are not single-family homes. So this is one of the reasons some people say, be careful, that's enough. I don't want you to invade my neighborhood. And a lot of us who've been here all this time, some have a different mentality than others, but hey, I moved here because of that. Back when the car was king, we didn't even put sidewalks in our subdivisions because nobody walked anywhere.
Right. Yeah.
But the thinking has changed. The desirability to walk, to get a little more independence from the automobile is a real need for people. And that's part of what we have to consider as we look into the next 20, 30 years, when a lot of people may not even bother owning cars. They'll have a self-driving Uber pull up to their house and take them where they want to go and drop them off. They don't have to worry about parking. They don't have to worry about insurance in a car. The world is changing, and we have to do our best to anticipate what that is and plan for it. That's the job we're trying to do.
And there was some recognition in housing that a majority of the multifamily units are in large multifamily projects, over 100 units. So there was a recognition of that, and potential, if we're going to build any more multifamily, that we're going to really focus on the smaller scale project at kind of the commercial fringe areas, and areas where a single family house wouldn't necessarily make sense in some of the the roadway corridors. But there was definitely an emphasis on really looking at an alternative to kind of that large scale multifamily development.
And we have that option because we have met the state 10%. Yep. So we have the ability to pick and choose where we might like small ones, especially ones that would be attractive to some of our seniors. Ernie points to himself, I'm there too, who might like to, at some point in time when you're not physically able or want to care for your single family home, cut the lawn and what have you, you might like to move into a smaller place, closer to services near the center of town, no maintenance problem. This is part of what we're thinking, because in addition to maintain the integrity of our single family neighborhoods being high in the priority, the other high priority is, what are we going to do for our seniors who want to stay here? That's a very big priority too. So we're trying to make both of those work together.
Now, is the thinking that seniors might not gravitate towards some of these new larger developments that we have, like the Northwest Park, the two big apartment buildings there, or the new one being built up near the other office park off of Cambridge Street?
The district,
Corporate
Drive.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the Davis Company.
So, but would prefer, smaller, couple family.
It wasn't really a question of preference. It was a question of options.
Okay.
We have a number of options in that category in the market, and what options we don't have is similar to the housing that's being developed or has been developed in the town center. That kind of the 30 unit project that's close to town services. For the Corporate Drive project, that was another kind of intentional friendly 40B project, because Burlington, we were at a potential point where we may fall under the 10%, especially as right now, if if you would notice all the building, that anyone who has extra property, or maybe doesn't even have enough extra, but whether it's variances or there's extra property, that there's a house being built everywhere you can see. Right. And we're looking at lots that we never even dreamed people would be proposing some subdivisions on.
Yeah.
But now it's economically feasible. So as the single family home growth continued, our subsidized housing inventory, deed restricted affordable units, which are the counted denominator, or numerator, sorry. The numerator was getting smaller and smaller, and that project on Corporate Drive was one to really launch us up at 13%, which protects us for a long time to come.
That was a proactive decision on the part of quite a few people in town to convince that developer. He was talking about possibly going to town meeting, wasn't that it, Jack, at the time, for looking to vary the PD that was there?
Well, he was originally just looking to develop something and was going to go to town meeting for a rezoning, but I believe enough of us prevailed upon him to look at the 40B and to incorporate what we call the friendly 40B, which has the advantage all of the units under the crazy way the state counts it.
So as long as 25 of them, right?
Right.
25%.
They all count. So
As long as they're
to say that 10% of our units are low affordable is not true.
Right.
But this is the way the state counts it, so that's the way it works.
Yeah, as long as they're apartments, 25%
25% of the units affordable, yeah.
then all of them count. I never understood that either. But so that was what I'm trying to say is we haven't been just sitting around. We realized, as Kristin has mentioned, that we were getting very close to the 10% or being under 10%. And we knew as soon as we dropped under the 10%, we were going to have some people knocking on the door looking for unfriendly, if you may, 40Bs. So this developer came forward and...
The other key thing that we did, I think it was the second year I was on the board back in 84, 85, we made the decision to bring in professional planners. So I think we've now had four. Kristin's our fourth planner since then, and we brought in professional planners to help us figure out how do we want to develop going forward, because we knew geographically we're a very attractive place for businesses that wanted to be, and part-time people like me, we had our jobs and other things to do. We decided we wanted to bring in professional planners, and our first, Colette Meunier, she was a Berkeley grad, very well trained, and Terry Zold and Tony and Kristin. So we've had a parade of four people who have helped us immensely focus on what we need to focus to plan for the future, and I think we've been doing a very good job with their assistance, and we're a very attractive place to be for both people to live and people to work.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the town has grown quite significantly, and people are very interested in coming here.
When you say grow,
Well, the commercial sector, at least.
yeah. Right,
Oh, yes.
because we are roughly the same
Yeah.
population we were 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah, about 40.
But like my house, there was myself, my wife, and 3 kids. And a lot of people like me. Now there's just 2 of us. We have no intention of moving. We like it here. So a number of the houses in town are occupied by just 2 older adults. Kids are long gone, but we're still occupying the same square foot space. So that's how we can have all these more units of housing, but not a whole lot more people.
Right.
Yeah, our population has stayed steady since the late 60s or early 70s for sure.
But the daytime population, as I
Oh,
call
right.
it, has
Correct.
grown
Yes.
quite significantly.
Yeah, but to the question, some people say, well, who are we building all these housing units for? As Jack mentioned, household form has changed significantly. So
Right.
that it's amazing actually that the population has been so steady.
It's such a nice place. Why would we move from here? Where would we go where we could get the services, the low taxes, in a place we're familiar with? Why leave unless we physically can't stay in our home? there's no good reason to do that.
Absolutely.
And that actually was a question that we asked in our housing survey, as to, why did you move here? Did you move here from somewhere else? Are you looking to move to somewhere else? Kind of to try to get at, is Burlington a leapfrog community to get to? And the pervasive answer was absolutely not. And the length of time and people stay in Burlington. I mean, once people move to Burlington, very few people move out of Burlington. And that was definitely a unique statistic. And the issue and this is where we got to housing for seniors, is the issue was people didn't want to move out but had to move out because they couldn't get services at home, or they didn't have enough mobility where they were, or just different
house
options.
maintenance.
But it was amazing how many people who move to Burlington stay in Burlington. It's a good story.
Some people may have moved here to be a leapfrog community, buy here to then upgrade, move to somewhere else. But an awful lot of them decided, I like it here.
Right.
I'm staying.
So one of the other things, the master plan process, you had these different elements that, I don't know if you want to, if anyone can rattle them off the top of your head, but I have them. So open space, housing, which we've talked a lot about, land use, transportation, economic development, the town center, services and facilities, and natural and cultural resources. We've talked a lot about housing. Let's talk maybe open space. What kind of feedback did you get from here about that, or what kind of looking forward? What do you sort of see as the future of open space areas in Burlington?
I'll start, but then feel free to jump in. So one of the things that the questions we asked was obviously people want to preserve open space. I think we expected those answers.
Sure.
But even more to that, how are we preserving them? How are we using them? And also, how does open space add value to the community? Kind of in looking at the larger open spaces, but also smaller open spaces, as to try to figure out how they're working, and are they working as well as they could be working. I mean, we looked at the small tot lots, we looked at the larger recreational facilities, we looked at the Mary Cummings Park, as well as little parks within Northwest Park, the park between the restaurants. And really there was a lot of discussion here, but it's important to preserve our open spaces, add open space where we can, even a small piece of open space, and weave the connections between those open spaces, and then kind of program them in a meaningful way and make them welcoming. A lot of people, we've been talking about the Mary Cummings Park. I mean, the Friends of Mary Cummings have done a tremendous job, but one of the things that the town did in agreement with the City of Boston was build a parking lot. And the parking lot is acting as kind of a welcoming door. Come park and explore. Whereas otherwise, unless you knew about it, as I said, the Friends did a great job putting signage up, and I think that's a big part of it. But when we built the field and the parking lot, all of a sudden people said, hey, there's a park that you can go explore. And just those type of things of what can we do more to really open up our open spaces and make them as valuable as we can, as well as create more connections and more open space where we can, including within the commercial areas. Not to say don't rebuild something, but when we do rebuild, how do we create open space connections?
And how do you sort of balance the pressure, about having, maintaining open space, but also having people who want to build either business or residential? Is that part of this,
Years ago, I don't know how many, we went to the cluster zoning, where they would build the same number of units on a piece of property that they could put out, 20,000 square foot housing lots. But instead they clustered them towards the center, leaving all the open space. That was attractive to the builder because they didn't have to build as many miles of streets, of sewer and infrastructure, so that lowered the cost for them, but it left for the residents of those houses a nice green area that just they could look out their back window and see woods or a pasture-like type thing. So that's preserving open space at no cost to the town, but they're doing that. We have, over the years, sometimes using state grant money, purchased pieces of land. I got involved in one because the development was going to go at the end of my street off Mountain Road, between Mountain Road and 128. We picked up, with a state grant, 26 acres of land that otherwise would have been something very commercial. And that 26 acres has grown by adding pieces up to close to 50 acres now.
Yeah.
A large piece of conservation land under the conservation. So any place we can grab a little piece, we're doing that. Some people say we've got too much. Some people we say we don't have enough. If you talk to Larry Cohen on the Conservation Commission, he compares us to surrounding communities, and he says we have less as a percentage than many of our surrounding communities
Of protected.
of protected land.
Protected land, right. I think a lot of our developers, you were saying, how do we balance with developers, are realizing that open space, whether it be something like Mary Cummings or something like the little parks between the restaurants at Northwest Park, is a big quality of life issue now, and to attract the type of employees and tenants for their housing, they have to have those amenities. And
It's true. Yeah.
The
open
Riverwalk.
space is one. I mean, I remember when way back when, 40 years ago, when you really didn't think of it because it was there, but now you have to plan for it and protect it, I think, more than.
Yeah, I know in talking with National Development about the
The
district.
Riverwalk.
Yeah, they're
Yes.
putting a lot of emphasis
Right,
on
right. Yep.
on that, because
Yep.
they know that people want to
Sure.
go outside
Yeah.
during the
It's
lunch
a
It's a
break.
small
or-
space, but it's very attractive, and it's sort of calming because you've got the bubbling waters going by. It's
Yeah.
well thought out. And we didn't have to fight them too hard to get it. A little bit, but not too hard.
Yeah, on that one, that was pretty.
They came around.
Yes,
Wasn't really
they usually
a big
do,
deal.
because they recognize the value of being here. And we ask them, if you want to take the benefit of our location and our long-term planning, we ask you to pay a little bit of an entry fee to get here, which adds to it, which makes it more attractive for the next person who wants to be here. It works good. It's a symbiosis of we all work together to create something better.
Perfect. Couple. I don't need to go through everyone like in that much depth,
The
but
clock will tell you when to stop.
yeah, it will. But one that I definitely wanted to touch upon was the town center, because I know there's been a lot of talk about, going forward. What do we want that section of Cambridge Street from the, I guess, Building 19 on down towards.
Well, the center's really bigger than that, but
Yeah, I know it is, but and there's
Yes, right,
plans.
right.
So what's sort of like the I guess the goal as far as what it's going to look like, how it's going to be different,
walkability, connectivity.
right? Because right now it's hard to walk. It's hard to cross the street down there.
Yeah, it's actually getting better, but believe it or not, than it was way back when, because we do have additional crosswalks and pedestrian lights there. There's the light at Skelton in Cambridge, which was never there before, which is now also a pedestrian light. But I think the what we were trying to do way back when the 3A committee got together and talked about the overlay district, which is what it is right now. It was, as Jack said, to create a walkable area so you didn't have to, drive to Shaw's and then get back in your car and drive up to CVS or whatever, that it was convenient and easy to walk that way. And I still think that is one of the goals we're looking for.
To enhance that walkability, though, we want to attract small local businesses there rather than large chains. That's not it. Small family-run restaurants, small family-type stores. Encourage somebody to not get back in the car and walk by and window shop and hopefully go in and buy something. That's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight. But we can see that it is creeping in that direction, and once the trend gets going, hopefully it will move a little faster. But it takes not just planning, but it takes paying close attention to make it develop in a way that contributes towards the end goal. We have to fight some people on that sometimes, and this planning board is willing to fight for a better long-term goal, and sometimes we do that.
We were looking to. We thought that we wanted some, as Jack says, some smaller local restaurant, not chain restaurants. The problem with that was, or the people we talked to that had these small restaurants, they couldn't afford to open a restaurant if they didn't have a liquor license.
Right.
And they couldn't afford the liquor license because the cost of buying one from somebody else who was going was not using it anymore was too high.
If it even existed.
If it even existed, right. So the town went to the legislature and asked for six.
I think so.
I think it was 6 all alcohol, 2 beer and wine.
Right.
Is that the-
Yeah.
was that
But
the-
they're geographically specific.
Right.
So they can't, in other words, somebody can't come in, start a restaurant, get a liquor license, and then say, I've got a better way to make money. I'm going to sell it to blah, blah, blah chain on the other side of town. They can't do that anymore. So we're trying to,
And they all went on the other side of town.
yes, well, that's what happened,
So-
yeah.
But
Right.
I believe there are some that are going to be restricted to the town center.
Yes.
All
And
of
the,
these
the
are, yeah.
town owns them. If somebody stops using it, the town takes it back.
Yeah.
Right.
They can't sell it.
Right. But it allows businesses to be competitive in
Yes.
the town center.
Yeah.
But to Jack's point, one of the biggest debates is you want the town center to look better. I mean, the town center was built when we were booming, and I mean, it's kind of a strip center when it was built, and that's fine, and it worked, but that's not really where we want people to go. We don't want giant parking lots in front of big box stores by any means. But we do have a lot of great local businesses that exist in
That
the town
already
center,
exist,
and it's really robust. And so where's the balance between redevelopment and keeping the tenants that are there? And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of the kind of interim improvements, such as in front of True North, where they put the little patio and the fence and the parking. And we're trying to encourage those type of improvements to continue, so we can. I mean, we don't want everything to come down and then not have these tenants there. So it's striking the balance and trying to create better mobility throughout the town center. And the Building 18 project is going to do a lot just to get people from the bottom to the top of the hill. I mean, there really wasn't a good network of sidewalk along that stretch. So,
The other big unsettled issue is who owns or controls Cambridge Street.
Right now.
And I'm not even going to start that debate here. I'm just going to say that there are people with some very strong opinions one way or the other, whether the state should keep it or whether the town should take it. And it's nothing but a can of worms, so let's not even go here. But just realize
is
that
an issue.
that's something that people wrestle with, and we're just trying to work around it at this point.
right. But we did, in the master plan, take a look at the importance of streetscape. So, I mean, and we built a lot of consensus there. So hopefully there's some direction within the plan that we can take to DOT to have conversations about improving streetscape. I think a good start is the conversations we've been having with the Building 19 project for signalization of that light, of that intersection when that comes in. So
So in case people weren't watching town meeting last September, I think.
oh,
So when
with
it
the
was-
signal. Yeah.
The signal there. So they're going to put, obviously everyone knows the Building 19 site, and but there's going to be a new light there. But it's sort of like a smart light, or we're going to work with the other.
So,
lights.
well, that's a whole nother. But,
Yeah, but that's,
but first, so there
Is that
is
what-
a
not
new
what you're talking
intersection at Building, or the shops at Simon's Park.
Yeah.
That's what it's called now. The new intersection is going to be a lot further south than the existing entrance where Building 19 was. So it's further up to the top
Towards
of the hill.
128.
Towards 128, so further toward the common. And a fully signalized intersection with pedestrian lights and crossing. So hopefully that'll help people crossing from Simon's Park over to that side. I know when the yogurt shop was there, we'd have a lot of kids just running across the street, and it was dangerous just to watch. So I think that conversation has been great, and the need for sidewalk and streetscape. And they've actually approached us just to say, can we continue that streetscape element and the lane configuration all the way to Bedford Street? So the conversation is ongoing, and I think it's a real positive statement, at least in that section of Cambridge Street. And I think we need to look at Cambridge Street section by section. I mean, Cambridge Street's a long road, and there's a lot of difference between the Billerica end and the town center and Wayside Road and the Woburn side. So we just need to look at them in pieces and do the best thing we can for each piece.
Go into the smart lights.
Yeah,
He raised that.
Oh.
Yeah,
People
raise
may
it.
not
Go
be
ahead.
aware of this because
Yes.
it's invisible, but
This
it's
is something
important.
that is really,
And it's a huge win for Burlington.
State money.
So DOT
Always good.
took every single, all 27 signals in the town of Burlington, and
whether they were state-owned or municipal.
state or
right?
municipal owned, and they put what's called an adaptive signal system in place. And really what that is it just, every signal has a box on the ground that's associated with it, and it really just changes out the hardware. So all of the lights work together, and the adaptive signal is it adapts to whatever's happening at the time. So if you're not doing signal timing anymore, it's not you're waiting when nobody is in the other side near, it sees the cue and it adapts to make sure it works as efficiently as that the intersection can. So right now they're about 80% done. They're all in place, but they're 80% done kind of doing the tweaking to make sure it's working as efficiently as it should. I think you're definitely seeing improved queues along Middlesex Turnpike, some with Burlington Mall Road, with the exception of still working out that if there's an ambulance coming in to Leahy, it goes back to default. So, but anyway, it's a huge. This is the only town that DOT has tested this whole town system in. There are a few systems and interchanges in other towns, but this is the first full town system to really do a pilot to see is this the right where
And this has been something that's been happening recently.
Yeah,
over the past, 18
last
months
summer.
maybe?
Last summer it was installed, and they're just making sure the system's working as it should. But it's a huge win for Burlington, and I think it'll help us get data from all these streets and systems, as well as everyone. The first thing when you talk about traffic, it's traffic congestion. All those people on the road. It's not me, but it's all of you. All those people.
$1.6 million cost, which we didn't have to put a dime into.
Yeah, we didn't pay for, but is improving traffic around every single road in town. I mean, there's still certainly things we can do with geometry and other fixes within some of our intersections, but from a hardware perspective, we were very lucky to be the recipient of that pilot program.
As smart as it is, come Christmas time, don't expect it to completely relieve the Christmas jam.
I don't think so.
That would probably overwhelm the capability of that program. But for most of the rest of the year, I think that we will find dramatic improvement in traffic. 2 years ago, I would do everything in the world to avoid going anywhere near Middlesex Turnpike, especially at around anytime close to within an hour either way of rush hour. I've found myself down there a number of times in the past year being very pleasantly surprised as to I just moved right through. No big problem. Maybe one traffic signal I had to wait at for a while, but things, not just the adaptive planning, but other things we've done have improved the traffic on that side of town considerably.
And we have a sidewalk on Middlesex Turnpike from Lexington to Bedford. It has been done. It was part of one of the last rounds of MassWorks program from the state grant funds that helped complete that network. And I don't think in the 15 years I've been here, ever thought that was going to be possible.
We're pretty good at getting money out of the state and out of the developers to contribute to the impact of their project, and plus a little extra help improve things. We've done well along those lines in the past years. Things have improved.
So the last of the elements I want to talk about is we talked a lot about residential concerns, town center, open space. What's some of the feedback that you've heard from some of the business leaders in town that you think what's their hot topics or
they want to be here.
Okay, so they're here.
They stand in line to come here. They pay high prices for property to be here. Why?
Well,
we're a good place to do business.
Well, we are, but I'm sure I know they have issues.
Oh, I mean,
things that they have concerns about.
Can't make all the people happy all the time.
You give your kid everything he wants, and he still wants more. It's just natural. So they've got issues.
We had a couple of business people on the master plan steering committee. Rick Parker, who is the
president of the chamber, and Bob Buckley, who is an attorney in town. His firm represents a lot of the businesses in town, and it was very, you would think that people would get their backs up and they'd be very aggressive back and forth. It was very,
as Kristin said, there was a lot of consensus from all divergent groups and points of view.
Healthy debate. in
Healthy
his-
Healthy,
debate,
sure,
right,
yeah,
sure.
I don't want to
But
say
that's
it
fine.
wasn't. No, it's great.
You know,
but the
I think
results are good.
I think they're concerned about the same things we are. Traffic. You know, they have to make sure they can get their employees there. Public transportation was a really big thing
Yeah.
with them because you have especially some of these restaurants. I mean, they may close at 12 o'clock at night and their employees get out at 1. If they don't have a car, they're not going anywhere except by Uber or Lyft or one of those. So they're working on things to shuttles that might take
Middlesex
their
3.
employees. Middlesex 3, an organization which includes a lot of the communities up and down Route 3 North, is working a shuttle service. What else have they been?
Right,
Yeah,
but
many of these restaurants have had trouble getting wait staff.
A lot of
Right.
them
Oh,
have
yeah,
had
And
a lot of trouble.
when you have a high-end restaurant, which many of these are, these patrons are paying big bucks to eat there. They want attentive service, and you need the people. So how are we going to get people, many of them who don't live here and can't afford to live in some of the close-by communities, how are you going to get them to and from work, especially at the hours they work? Transportation for those people is a big factor,
Yeah.
and that's part of what we've been working on.
Yeah, off-peak transportation and young people getting into Burlington. So, I mean, as we all observe, that a lot of people don't work 9 to 5 anymore. It's some variation of, and you know, you have the service and hospitality industry that works. They could work 4 to 1, or 4 to 11, and there really isn't, other than having a car, a way to get out of Burlington. We are well served by MBTA and the LRTA, but we're well served if you want to work from 9 to 5. And come in at 9 and leave at 5. So there really isn't that many other options. And it's Boston or Lowell. It's not, surrounding communities. So that's a big challenge. And I think we're working well with Middlesex 3, as mentioned, to get there to meet some of those challenges. But there's bigger challenges that we've seen a lot of the development within the planned development districts within town, but we also have a lot of land that is not in planned development districts that sits in commercial. And we have our traditional zoning districts of kind of general business, which is more of kind of retail, and general industrial, which is more of your office and industrial. One of the, I think, big hurdles that we really need to take a look at is if it's not in a PD, what do we want to see? And does our existing zoning districts allow that? And what we're getting a lot of demand for is, as mentioned before, is just different amenities right there. I mean, people want to do everything where they work. And right now we have single-use zoning districts. You're industrial, residential, retail, and it just doesn't really get at what those kind of amenities and mixed-use environments that we want to be looking at in the future. So I think those are some of the main points that the business community made. And also, we're looking at business retention. I mean, what you're seeing right now is a lot of companies, and one of the things that we worry about is that, we have these great startup companies until some big behemoth somewhere else buys the startup company. Do they stay in Burlington or do they go somewhere else? And we really need to work on making it known to some of these behemoths, and that might not be in Burlington, but also the employees that work here. We want to make sure that they can start their business here, grow their business here, and stay here. And how do we provide for those different levels of kind of business environments, and or how do we kind of figure out what those space needs are, what the mixed uses are? And I mean, the major question, what's next for the Burlington Mall, I think is one of the hottest questions that I think we'll be talking about for many years. Well, hopefully not many years, but at least in the next couple of years, as to figure out what that evolution is. Because, I mean, malls are changing everywhere. Our mall is doing very well, but it's doing very well in today's atmosphere, today's environment and mix of uses. And does our zoning districts, where it sits, allow for that evolution? So
Going back to the idea of the small startup business, we've been working with Northeastern University, who's trying to develop an incubator set up there to get some small high-tech businesses started there. And they have some space for them while there's still 2 and 3 people. But as soon as they grow a little bit bigger, we'd love to see them stay in Burlington. So if some person has a large office building of 100,000 square feet, but they're only leasing out 80 or 90, these people can move in, so that building becomes fully occupied, and they have a place to do their business till they grow and big enough to occupy the whole building. So we want to keep our business sector full, thriving, and active, because if you're not working to keep it full, it can go empty on you real fast and spread like a cancer. Vacancies like a cancer. We don't want to see that. We want to give people a reason to come here, a reason to stay here, and a reason to be good citizens and neighbors while they are here. And I think we've been effective at doing that.
I think that just about wraps it up. The last thing is, I know that you said that the draft of the master plan is on the site. What kind of public participation are you looking for at this time? Feedback, or what? And then I guess, where do we go? What's the next step?
So the drafts, we actually have the first drafts on the website. The second drafts are going up shortly.
Okay.
And we would look for feedback. We have, there's a worksheet that you can fill out for feedback, or you can just email us online, or you can just email us with any feedback. As I mentioned, the planning board is going to have a series of special planning board meetings to discuss all the topics. That schedule will be out shortly. And then we will be setting up the implementation committee, and they will be having meetings as well, and they are all open to the public, and there will be an absolute, if you want to be involved, I think it's going to be very easy to be involved, and we hope that people continue to take a look at it and comment and hopefully join in the dialogue, and most importantly, join in the conversation about, how do we make this happen?
And hopefully you'll live broadcast all those on BCAT.
Well, I think as long as you give us a heads up and do it in one of the rooms that has the mics, we probably can be able to do that. All right. Well, I want to thank you, once again, for coming in, Jack, Kristin, and Ernie. Appreciate your time and your
Thank you.
thoughts
Thank you for
and
inviting us.
expertise on this subject.
It's a good opportunity to speak to the folks of Burlington. We appreciate that.
Well, thank you very much. And there you have it. We once again like to thank my guests, planning board members Jack Kelly and Ernie Covino, and planning director Kristin Kassner. I'd like to thank you for watching this edition of BNews In Depth. I've been your host, Rich Hosford, and we will see you next time.